Good morning,
Well,
everyone.
welcome.
It is Sunday, the 10th of January, 2021, our new year.
Thank God for the new year. Everything is going smoothly and easily and just a
It's a new
perfect.
year.
Yeah,
Everything
yeah.
is
Wow.
new and beautiful. Someone shared with us earlier with our group that's watching us that someone said, let's make the events of last Wednesday, let's call it December 37th of 2020 so we can keep it in the past year. So this is a spiritual talk. This is a spiritual conversation, and we want that to be our focus. And yet, I really feel like I can't not talk about the elephant that's in the room. We have to acknowledge what we've all been through this week, which is the event at our Capitol, where the Capitol building was under siege, under the direction of our president. And what does that all mean? Our talk today is soul talk. So we're essentially talking about our souls and what we believe. And when I'm going to read to you what we believe as written by our founder, Ernest Holmes. And when I read it to you, sometimes we can think, but how do I make sense of what's happening in the world based on this belief?
And but within 30 minutes, we'll have figured
We'll
it
have
all
it
out.
all
Yeah,
answered for
yeah.
you, yes. Uh, but I must tell you about this because it's fascinating to me. I think it's so well written and so beautiful. And yet, what happened was reporters and people who wanted to be able to tell people what this thing called science of mind is told him, you're going to have to write down what it is we believe so that we can actually tell people. So he went and sat down and wrote in just a matter of minutes, and this is what he came up with. And it still is just as perfect today as it was when he wrote it. And I don't know the date of when he wrote it, but he died in 1960, so it was before that. And it's just entitled What We Believe. We believe in God, the living Spirit Almighty, one indestructible, absolute, and self existent cause. This one manifests itself in and through all creation, but is not absorbed by its creation. The manifest universe is the body of God. It is the logical and necessary outcome of the infinite self knowingness of God. We believe in the incarnation of this Spirit in us, and that all people are incarnations of the one Spirit. We believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul, forever and ever expanding. We believe that heaven is within us and that we experience it to the degree that we become conscious of it. We believe the ultimate goal of life is to be a complete emancipation from all discord of every nature, and that this goal is sure to be attained by all. We believe in the unity of all life and that the highest God and the innermost God is one God. We believe that God is personal to all who feel this indwelling presence. We believe in the direct revelation of truth through our intuitive and spiritual nature, and that anyone may become a revealer of truth who lives in close contact with the indwelling God. We believe that the universal spirit, which is God, operates through a universal mind, which is the law of God, that we are surrounded by this creative mind, which receives the direct impress of our thought and acts upon it. And that is what we believe. So, as I said, it's so beautiful and so all encompassing, um, and I do believe it.
If we behave with the understanding that God is in all of us equally, and that we are always treating the God part of every person that we meet, then we treat them differently than if we believe that that's missing. And I cannot help but wonder what it would be like if in the last week or two, we had all treated each other as if there were God present in each of us with that kind of respect and kindness. And I think that's what's easily missing in all of this. When I was getting ready to to do this today, for some reason, I flash back on two dogs, puppies. And when puppies are playing, one of the things they learn to do, and it takes some time to figure this out, is not to bite too hard.
Mm, mhm.
And they learn that they can bite each other in play, and in the play, they're actually struggling for dominance and for control. But they also know that when they bite too hard, they lose that struggle, and now it becomes a game of hurt. And for us, I think it's really, really important to ask ourselves, are we engaged in a game of hurt, or are we engaged in trying to have our needs be met in a way that respects the God and other people as well? And that is a very, very tight rope. It's a tough one to manage. But I cannot help but think, with what I've seen and what I know in my own life, what I'm like when I go from being reasonable and rational with powerful emotion into rage and upset and anger as a kind of tantrum, that after when that switch gets pushed or turned on, not much good happens. And I think for all of us to be careful that we're operating below that threshold and working hard to make sure that we don't get to that point where it's okay because I feel that strongly. It's okay to hurt you because I feel that strongly. It's not okay to hurt you when I feel that strongly. It's not okay to hurt anyone.
So, if I could, since this is being recorded, let's name what has happened this week. That is what we're referring to. On Wednesday of this past week, January 6th, which was the date that Congress met to count the electoral votes to approve Joe Biden as the legitimate next president. Our current president, Trump, had a big rally of his supporters. And in that big rally, he's been telling them all that the election was stolen, and they believe him. He's been telling them all that it was rigged and this has been stolen. And he told them that they need to fight. They need to fight to regain their country, to get their country back. And he said, we will walk down Pennsylvania Avenue to the Capitol, and you need to be strong because they don't respect weakness. And so they were actually directed to do this and did so very eagerly and willingly. And they believed they were fighting for justice and saving their country. They believed they were saving their country. And what happened was a very dangerous situation where 5 people were killed, and many people threatened and endangered, and the Capitol was torn up and desecrated, and all directed by our president. So when I tell, I felt, and I think I need to name it because you may have felt the same way. I felt angry and violated, and I had trouble letting it go, and I want justice. I want justice to be done, and yet interestingly, a large part of my family uh, is is under the belief that everything Trump says is true and accurate, and it's the rest of us and the other part of government that's the enemy. And it's so hard for me to believe that people I know and respect and I know are intelligent and I love, have this opposite view of what's happening. And, it's the inevitable result that we have two different sources of news. So I believe what I'm told through the news, they believe what they're told through the news. Now, we're not going to solve that today, but the biggest thing I need to remember is they are not the enemy and they are not the problem, and that we are all expressions of God, and that we are all um, well, I have to ask myself, what is my job? What is my part in this? How can I bring peace and healing? And I can tell you that it starts with me. It's a let there be peace on earth and let it begin with me. And so our talk today is soul talk. And I wanted to reiterate what our founder, Ernest Holmes, said about the soul. He says, we believe in the eternality, the immortality, and the continuity of the individual soul. forever and ever expanding. So that's for all of us. So this is an eternal game.
Yeah, when we think about the soul expanding, then another way that I would frame that or suggest we look at that is that the soul is also evolving, is also in the process of becoming. And so that it isn't, I've often thought when I was growing up that the soul was a little spot somewhere inside of me hidden away. And that when I died, that little spot would go and continue on, but nobody quite knew where that spot was. But what I've come to believe now is that the soul is an integral part of our whole being. And it is a part of our whole being, is experiencing and expressing and developing and evolving. And so, if in fact we're all works in progress, then we need to be careful not to treat each other like we are works that have concluded. We're not in conclusion. We're still in process. We're still learning. And the struggle with how do I be my authentic self and not step on everyone else or not make other people wrong or not in some way imply that because they don't believe what I believe, they're wrong. If we're all evolving equally, we're all managing in the same world, we need to be able to take a step back and say, I don't understand how you get to where you are, but I have to respect that that had some intelligence also, that has validity. And so one of the upsets that I'm seeing is that people don't just feel differently, they're feeling made wrong for feeling differently or thinking differently. And I think we cannot make other people wrong and to make ourselves right. We can say, this is my truth, this is me in the process. And I'm always reminded of something that I learned a long time ago when in college. When I first went to college, I knew everything and I had everything figured out. There was black and white and everything in between that
Mhm.
was gray was not important. And my professor used to say in psychology, this is our current knowledge. This is what we know right now. This is our best information right now. And he always, I at some point I said, why are you always so tentative? And he said, because we live in a tentative world. We live in an evolving world. Whatever we know today may be different when we know more tomorrow. So we could say, this is what I know right now. This is what I believe right now, as opposed to this is what I believe. It's a matter of fact. There's no question. Don't challenge it. Don't talk about it. I'm right. You're wrong. Leaving that room for each of us to evolve. And so, for our soul's benefit, we need to take the position that we're in process. And if we can't do that, then we are going to have to defend what we say is fixed.
And, our vision as an organization, Centers for Spiritual Living around the world, is a world that works for everyone. And we are working on becoming the beloved community that creates that on earth. And so our challenge is to see these activities that appear exactly the opposite of what we want to see happen and want to believe. And it's so easy to want to enter into condemnation of it. And yet I ask myself, well, how do I heal it? And first I have to reach some understanding of their sense of being violated, whether I agree with it or not, that that's how they're feeling. And what can I do to bring peace? Because we believe that the most powerful thing that we do is use our thoughts, our images, our intentions to create what we want in the world. We believe that is the science of mind. We believe that is what Ernest Holmes just said in All That What We Believe, that our mind is in the mind of God, and that's how we create. So I must think and see peace on earth and love being manifested. That's our job. If we're to become the beloved community, we must love. We must love all of them, even if we disapprove and don't like their behavior. There's a difference between loving them and not liking behavior that's happening. And this doesn't mean that we need to roll over and be a victim and say,
Mhm.
continue abusing me. Not at all. I think we need to stand up for what we believe is justice, stand up for those we feel that are being um, thought of and treated unjustly, and to in fact become the beloved community. This is an opportunity. That's what turned me around yesterday. I was so upset yesterday. And I finally realized that this is an opportunity for us to create and do what we say we're all about.
Years ago, I was trained to assist people when they were violent to not be violent. This is in a psychiatric setting, and they were people that would have a re-experience of their PTSD. And in the middle of their PTSD experience, they would rage and become dangerous and flail and want to hurt other people that they believed were hurting them. This was real for them. This was not a question. When someone who's believing that they're being attacked hits you, the impulse is to want to hit back. And what I had to learn to do, what we were trained to do, was to restrain, to limit, and to hold close to ourselves that person who was having trouble with controlling and sorting out what they were dealing with and not harm them. And what I saw and what I've seen since with the police often is that they have the same mandate until one of them is hit. And when one of them is hit, then the trigger is pulled. And then it's you inflicted pain, I will inflict equal or more pain. And all I know is that in no world does that ever work. We have lots of evidence that in the immunology, I'm not saying that correctly, world, where we've developed a drug to kill a bacteria, and then the bacteria has outfoxed us and developed an ability to fight us. We're fighting virus, so we're fighting illnesses now that are so much more powerful because we've made them more powerful. Every time we come up with an antibiotic, the bacteria comes up with a better defense against it. What we've learned more recently is to understand the bacteria. We
Or
have,
the virus.
or the virus. We've learned to study it and say, what is its nature and how can we intervene in a way that does not attack it, but makes us not vulnerable to it? That's a very interesting shift of perspective.
Hmm. Hmm.
Our medicine itself is based on what we call the silver bullet phenomena, which is that there's a silver bullet for everything. If you get a big enough bullet and you aim it correctly, you'll be able to kill whatever you want to kill. The problem with that, of course, is it doesn't work. And so as we stand along next to a virus or a bacteria and say, what is your nature? What can we do that will not violate you, but not allow you to violate us? We begin to come up with a whole new technology. You could say in medicine, we're coming up with a nonviolent technology, and it's new. And it's interesting that it's new because we've had lots and lots of technology available, but it's always been based, like I said before, on this notion of, at least in Eastern or in Western society, it has been Eastern society, a little different. The whole perspective has been, how does the system work? And when you understand the system, then what can you do to the system to prepare it for the situation, as opposed to who's the enemy and how are we going to get them? So we have to get away from this enemy kind of consciousness idea. Who's the enemy and how can we get rid of them? To how can we stand along next to the person we say is our enemy and understand them and understand their nature and understand their requests, their desires, and what they require. And in that come to some sort of conclusion. But when we think about that, we're also talking about our own soul, because as we learn to dance with others, as we learn to get along with others that are different from us, we learn to get along with our own differences within ourselves. Because the truth is, we have lots of areas in our own lives where there's disagreement, but we normally compartmentalize them and keep them separate. As we become as we invite ourselves to look into our own nature without judgment, but to understand, we invite our nature to become revealed to us.
Another part of the elephant that's in the room that I feel I really must address is how this must feel to our people of color in this country, our beautiful people of color, when you see the difference in how the police force reacted to this violent mob compared to how they reacted to those in Black Lives Matters demonstrations this summer. We were all amazed at how much restraint the police showed and how little violence they offered the violent demonstrators. And it was clearly a picture of the difference. If we ever doubted, if we ever wondered, it was a huge picture of the difference of how um, our people of color when they demonstrate are treated by our police. And in many ways, it was all about that. And we can't neglect that because with our new administration, we have the first woman of color vice president. And while many of us like us are celebrating that, um, it's not being so well received in other parts. And so how do we heal that? How do we heal that? We heal it by knowing the truth, by first of all knowing peace within, doing our part to acknowledge the the ugliness that exists and even maybe our part in that, as hard as that is for us to do, to look at how may I have been complicit in that? How have I not recognized or perhaps thought it was somebody else's problem to fix that injustice, to fix that unfairness? What can I do now to acknowledge it, recognize it, and actively do my part? And first and foremost of all is love. We need to love everyone, and if there's anyone we can't love, we need to work on that because they are all children of God. We, we in this movement, many of us believe that the whole earth is evolving into a different shift of energy, of love and peace, and the great Aquarian conspiracy that's been going on my whole life, I think. And yet, then we see all this opposite of that, and it can be hard to integrate. But the truth is, whenever there's great change like that, there will be great objection to the change. And so we just need to understand it's all part of that same thing. And we need to do our part to see it unfold peacefully.
And as we do that, then we allow our own soul to explore its own nature. And so it comes back to us and of course the miracles, and I love it that there's only two emotions, love and fear.
Yes.
And if it isn't love, it's fear. And so much of what I have witnessed in this last week has not been, you could call it anger, you could call it hate, you could call it hurt, but it's really fear. It boils down to fear, and there's an absence of love. There's a belief in the fear. There's a commitment to a belief in the fear that we have to be willing to set aside. So, if in fact we were to ask ourselves at any point in time, is what I'm doing in the direction of love or is it a response to fear? And
Well
the
said.
more we do that, the more, if even if we can't always change what we're doing, we can give ourselves updates and give ourselves a chance to improve in an area where we see, wow, I was operating out of fear in that situation. The crimes that are being committed on a daily basis, if you look at most of them, it's a fear of not enough. It's a fear that I'm not important. It's a fear that I'm being discounted. It's a fear of my not having value. And when other people tell you that you don't have value, that hurts. When you agree that you don't have value and are fighting other people because you believe you don't have value, that hurts even more.
I wanted to share something that I read this week in Science of Mind magazine. It's an article by uh, Reverend Dr. Jesse Jenkins. And he tells the story, reminds us of the story of Pandora's box. We call it Pandora's box. It was actually a big container. And we all know that, that it's Greek mythology. And when she opened this container, all the evils of the world rushed out. And that's the cause of all the evil in the world. Not unlike the story of Eve, that always blamed the woman on all the evils. But what I was surprised to learn was that Pandora, the name actually means giver of gifts. Pandora was the first female, according to the Greek mythology, the first female created, and she was the giver of gifts. Now, how can you um, understand that when the container was released, all these evils emerged, and yet she's the giver of gifts? Well, each of these evils is an opportunity for us to come to understand, to see, and to make right. I believe that when we came to this earth school, we are here to make things right. If we had nothing to make right, you know, we wouldn't have any of the adventures and challenges that we have. It would just be a pablum life. I mean, you could just stay in what we think of as heaven and be bored all day. So we could think of all these what we see as injustices and challenges that need to be righted as opportunities to create the world we want to see, to create the love we want to see in the world, the equality we want to see in the world, the I'd like to see the unity in this country again, and I think that we will see that only when we are all getting the same information.
Well, when you look at the gift of electricity, it's also what we use to execute people. And so every gift that we're given is an opportunity to explore
Mm.
all the different ways it can be used. And so if we had no gifts, there would be no danger. But no, when we're given a gift, we're given an opportunity to decide on how to be powerful in a way that is useful and constructive or destructive. And we haven't always done such a good job with managing all of these. Our first impulse is me first, whatever it takes. I will win, and if I win, then everything is good. And in the truth, in a world in which we live together, that doesn't work so well. I know one of our center members has been working for a very long time on building, and I think has had lots more experience than we've had on building a community of people living together. And and I think she knows more than anyone else probably how difficult that is to do. As soon as you get five people together that all want to live together, they start living separately in so many ways that we don't even realize they will. And so planned communities unfortunately often die because the heart and soul of them isn't in the goodwill, it is in self-interest. And so how do we set our own self-interest aside, or what appears to be our self-interest, to the greater interest, the greater good?
Well, the analogy you gave of electricity reminds me in my early days of understanding this teaching, where we say that God is power, and we all have this power within us, not equal, but the same ability to create what we want. And they use the example that electricity is just a power in the universe, and you can use it for good or for
Mhm.
bad. You can turn on the light switch and have lights and let there be light and let that be good, or you can get electrocuted. And so it's how we choose to use this power. So we do have the power to create. We have the power to create the world that we want. And many of us see this election actually as that opportunity to have someone in power that can have as a priority the quality of our caring for our earth and reversing the damage we've done. And and yet that same power can be used for ill.
So for those of you that are tuning in for the first time, we don't spend every Sunday talking about the politics of our time, but it's pretty hard on a week like this last week to not talk about it. Would almost be, I think, a denial to not include it. And I'm struck with how much of our time was spent not doing spiritual things, but trying to figure out how to manage what does all this mean. So that's why we brought it to you this Sunday, and why we're going to have discussion when this is over. We'll all be able to talk some more. Those of you that have joined us live, I want to mention that we are the Center for Spiritual Living, and for those of you that support us or want to support us, uh, it's important to know this is how you can do that. You go to this website and make a loving donation and help us support the work that we're doing.
There's a ways to donate button that you can click, and one of the ways is through well, you just give your information to it, and you can do it through Easy Tithe or through the donate button that goes through PayPal. But we appreciate your support.
So why don't we end with a go ahead,
Let's do. Do
a treatment?
you want to do it together?
Probably.
Okay. So let's go within and know the truth of our being. We know there's one life, one God, one power, one love, and the essence of that is us, lies within us. We are that, experiencing ourselves as human beings for this lifetime on this earth. Our soul is eternal and forever and ever expanding, growing and experiencing, and we are experiencing and growing it right here, right now. Wisdom is the goal. And so we know all of these challenges that we see and participate in and know are part of our growth.
And I want to add to this what Judith said, and it is,
So we accept our part in it. We accept our choice to be high-minded, to stay in the knowledge of the truth, which is that we are all spiritual beings and we are all one. Everyone is our brother and sister, and we love them and we want to see the best for them as well. We give thanks, we release, and together we say,
and so it is.
so it is.